reason that I've been in press and pause on the podcast the last couple of weeks is because we just went through a pretty cataclysmic change in my home. I spoke about, I think, again at the start of the year, how we brought my mother in to live with us this last year. And it was a decision that I was really proud of making from a legacy perspective. It aligns with my values and the impact that I want to have as a daughter and a mother. We talked about how incredible an opportunity it's been for, my daughter to really witness seeing me as a daughter and showing her, like what that actually means, from a legacy perspective to really be able to show up and make it count when it counts the most. So she was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer that was terminal, and she decided not to do the treatment, which we all totally understood and backed up as a family after watching my dad go through cancer treatment. And so, yeah, like I said, it was a pretty accelerated track. And her one wish is that she wanted to come home and not be in the hospital. And so, of course, that was what I said from the start was I really wanted to honor like her conscious choices throughout this process. And so for the last 6 weeks, my daughter and I were able to facilitate that. We were able to bring her home and we were able to walk her home, her soul home, in
Mhm.
terms of being able to spend so much of that time. I want to use the word in ceremony because that's really what it felt like to me. It was such a deeply profound experience. Again, I want to do another episode, down the line to really unpack some of what I really downloaded from a consciousness standpoint, walking my mother home and through that portal. But for the purposes of today's topic, this obviously has me and us, therefore, because you've been right there alongside me. Yeah, talking about the concept of grief. Welcome to the Conscious Leadership Revolution podcast, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome back to the Conscious Leadership Revolution podcast. I am so excited to be back in this chair, literally in a chair at my cottage, but metaphorically in this chair with you, Trace, back in this podcast studio. We've been gone for a couple of weeks. So we just wanted to pop in here with a quicker episode just to update our peeps in terms of what's been going on in our worlds. And yeah, with a plan and an intention to come back with a part two and an extension in terms of where we can actually go a little bit deeper on this concept that we want to unpack today. One of the things we've been talking about a lot on this show ever since we launched this new version of the podcast is how we're really feeling called to spread the ripple effect on the power and potential of conscious leadership right about now because of all the accelerated change that we're experiencing. And Tracey and I have definitely been experiencing that radical acceleration of change ever since this fire horse year took hold at the end of February. And we've talked about change from a consciousness standpoint in a lot of different ways so far. But the one aspect that I feel like we haven't talked about that connects to why we've been out the last couple of weeks is this whole concept of grief and how, yeah, with that type of radical change comes this necessary processing of the emotions that get stimulated when we're going through these gauntlets of change, especially when they are connected to significant aspects of your mission. So, Trace, I just want to open this up to you, and I just want to ask you what comes to mind when you think about this whole concept of needing to grieve change?
hmm Yeah, I think we're doing that in so many areas of our lives right now. If anybody is listening to any kind of people that are having spiritual awakenings and, letting go of certain things, and that can be grief, just change in your personal life, right? Like closing out a friendship or a relationship can bring that, as well as, as simple as, we were talking about just recently is like, just before we got on the pod, just catching up. It's like being able to cope with like tough situations where, your expectations are have been set, and then, you have a change of plans and you're watching your kids trying to adjust and adapt to these changes, and it could cause them grief because it's super frustrating, and it's like, they've been working hard on a certain sport, and things get, you know literally jammed up, or there's a problem with a partner that they're working with, and it's a grieving process, right? And everything is what we're kind of feeling these days. I feel is a lot of it is related to the same emotions as grief, right? And
Mhm.
I think some of them pass a lot faster or easier to process faster, and others are a huge amount of, so it's so significant that they take more time, obviously, to process. But like you and I have talked about, it's so important to actually process the emotions so that you can move forward, right? And
Mhm.
you and I have talked about just recently is how long do you stay in that process of grief, and when is it okay to like try to distract yourself a little bit with other things, because when I came on this pod right now, I was so distracted with, and it wasn't necessarily full out grief, but it's disappointment for my child. That's like, oh,
Mhm.
for them, it's really tough. Um, I already feel better because we've talked through it, but that's an easier one than some of the other big pieces that we have in our lives that are changing and that we need to process through to be able to get on the other side of that, right? And I think it's
Mhm.
being able to like see the other side and see the positives of it to get there,
Mhm.
while honoring the process of grieving.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, well, I totally resonate, obviously, with everything that you just said. It really is what conscious leadership is all about, right? We said at the start of this show when we were defining it, conscious leadership really is about bringing as much awareness to your experience as you possibly can. And by the way, your experience is constantly and chronically changing as you grow, as you get older, as you go through different stages of life or different levels of your career. We talked about this huge
Mm-hmm.
change with this new role that you just took on
Mm-hmm.
a couple of months back, right? And so, yeah, I think it's so important, obviously, to be a conscious leader and to really be at the helm in terms of your experience means that you have to be present and available to it. And so, of course, there's a giant spectrum in terms of what that grief can look like, depending on the significance we're saying. And so, yeah, the reason that I've been in press and pause on the podcast the last couple of weeks is because we just went through a pretty cataclysmic change in my home. I spoke about, I think, again, at the start of this show, at the start of the year, how we brought my mother in to live with us this last year. And it was a decision that I was really proud of making from a legacy perspective. It aligns with my values and the impact that I want to have as a daughter and a mother. We talked about how incredible an opportunity it's been for, my daughter to really witness seeing me as a daughter and showing her, like what that actually means, from a legacy perspective to really be able to show up and make it count when it counts the most. And I want to do an entire episode on unpacking all the valuable lessons that we experienced in that last year, but the most significant ones came over the last 3 months. So she was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer that was terminal, and she decided not to do the treatment, which we all totally understood and backed up as a family after watching my dad go through cancer treatment. And so, yeah, like I said, it was a pretty accelerated track. And her one wish is that she wanted to come home and not be in the hospital. And so, of course, that was what I said from the start was I really wanted to honor like her conscious choices throughout this process. And so for the last 6 weeks, my daughter and I were able to facilitate that. We were able to bring her home and we were able to walk her home, her soul home,
Mm.
in
Mhm.
terms of being able to spend so much of that time. I want to use the word in ceremony because that's really what it felt like to me. It was such a deeply profound experience. Again, I want to do another episode down the line to really unpack some of what I really downloaded from a consciousness standpoint, walking my mother home and through that portal. But for the purposes of today's topic, this obviously has me and us therefore, because you've been right there alongside me. Um, yeah, talking about the concept of grief
Mhm.
because I can't imagine anything more significant in terms of a change than the end of that story with our mothers. They are our portal from the divine. It's literally how I think about the significance of this relationship. And so, yeah, there's a lot that's connected to that change for me and for my daughter and for us as a family, as a whole, in terms of my brother and sister's kids. This is going to be, I have a feeling, not a short track in terms of just some of the layers that I can feel already over the last week coming into my consciousness.
Mm.
But but yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Like how do we calibrate that? If it's something we know is probably one of the most significant changes that we will all inevitably have to go through at some point along our legacy journey. I think it's really important. It's something I want to speak to in terms of how do we manage a process that goes that deep and is that profound, and therefore can be that extensive in terms of all of the different layers that need processing,
Mhm.
including reimagining a world, right, without them in it. Um, I remember when I was 19 and I lost my father, I did not have a lot of consciousness. That was my call to consciousness I've spoken on the show about before. Um, yeah, because I was young and I didn't have the capacity, and that was so significant in terms of that relationship that I had with him. I didn't have any calibration system in terms of how to process my way through it. And so what I did is I stuffed it down. I went back to school, I went back to hockey, and I just pretended it never happened. And in so many different ways, that really was the start of, this call to my life's work because it inevitably had to put me in the chokehold to put me on a path where I really started to be able to discover, the importance of understanding and processing my way through everything that I emotionally had packed away or stockpiled in the basement. And that is something that I know leading up to this, I've been so conscious and so intentional about is that I don't want to do that because I know how much time that cost me in terms of how out of alignment it pushed me and how much suffering ensued as a result of me not authorizing, being able to really go there and make myself available to whatever was going to come to the surface. And so here I am. I've made that intention and I'm being very conscious about it, but it's extensive, like I
Mhm.
just said. And of course, I'm a leader. I'm a mom. I'm a doggy mom now. Like I got all of you and this passion and this business of mine. So I know life has to continue and life has to go on. And this is everything that Brooklyn and I have been discussing in our home this week. But what does that even look like when
Mhm.
holding such enormous grief?
Mhm.
Um, I don't first and foremost think that grief looks the same for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very aware about the fact, and I think I've been ever since being made fun of in my home for being the crybaby of the Hobson bunch, that I'm a sensitive soul. And you all know I wear my heart on my sleeve. And so yeah, like my emotions run really deep. And that is my superpower, in terms of my life's work, my impact game. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm so sensitive. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I want to be responsible in terms of how I'm navigating this extensive process. And what that looks like to me is it looks like getting back to not even my work, my calling,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, because this is also where I experience that love, you know. It's getting back to, some of the experiences in Brooklyn's world that I know that she needs to feel like herself. Um, it looks like, when we're not with these other activities or passions or joys or people, it looks like sitting in silence. I'm up at my lake cottage, I sat down on my dock for a good hour with my coffee this morning, sobbing in my journal, and then meditating to feel that connection. But I think what's so powerful is when you authorize being available to whatever wants to come up, because this is the thing about grief, it's totally unpredictable. You don't know what's going to come or when necessarily, but I think when you authorize making space for it rather than trying to outrun it until it comes and finds you, then I find that you're able to start to get back to these other things that you love and get back to your life and these other experiences because it knows it has a place, it knows it's being honored. And that's the last thing that I want to say about grief. Grief is it's just another expression of love. It's I've been saying to Brooklyn, it's the other side of love, in terms of this deep, deep appreciation that you have for how profound the love is because it's gone. And oftentimes that means that we're able to appreciate it in a whole new way, in a whole new perspective. And so, yeah, just like I want to honor my mom and cherish the memories I have with her and really do everything in my power to live her legacy through my choices. Um, Grief to me and the love that I'm saying is grief is an extension of her. And so I want to honor it. And that means I want to make space for it. I want to authorize and give permission to whatever wants to come. And also know that if I'm not in it all the time, it does not mean that I don't miss her or that it's easy for life to go on without her. It does not mean any of those things. And so this is the call when it comes to grief and it comes to radical change and disruption, which we all know is predictable. Whether we're conscious about that or not, it is predictable that we are all going to experience these moments in our timeline. And so, what I think is most important as a mindset coach is really taking time to understand what that means to you and really making space to understand what you need to do to authorize that in a way that's going to keep you in your flow, that's not going to require you to be completely sidelined from the life that is still happening right here and now, because that's what they would want. Like we said, that's part of honoring them too, is yeah, I know it would destroy her if she thought that Brooklyn and I couldn't get back up and keep trucking. That was the thing that I wrote a post about this week is one of the things that my mom taught me the most. My mom was one of the strongest humans I've ever met. She really showed me what it means to keep going. When we lost my dad, she was took over his store 7 days a week, running his leadership team and his salespeople and his like ops people in the back warehouse. Like my mom just stepped into it and kept going. And I'll never forget that. And it's something I'm really reflecting on actually this week, now that she's gone. She went 25 years without the love of her life. She never even looked another way. It was all about she needed to keep going for us kids. And then it became our kids, her grandkids. And so I know that that too is love. And that is the love that lasts beyond this lifetime. You know, that's energy that never dies. And that brings me so much comfort. Even this thought of her back, with my dad, having the love of his life back on his arm. Like there's moments in this grieving process where I am finding all kinds of spontaneous joy too in my processing of everything that wants to come up. So yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty. I think that's usually why we forebode it, and push it away and try to suppress, repress, and deny it. But this is what we came here for. We're human beings. We've said this too as we've been talking about AI. We're not robots.
Mhm.
And what that means to be human, it means to see life in color. And that color is our emotional spectrum. And that is for sure on a soul level something that I know deeply. I came here to do is to experience all the colors of the rainbow. And that's probably why I have such sensitivity now that I think about it.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah. So I just wanted to hold space because, I've had a lot of people reaching out to me and a lot of different perspectives offered to me in terms of what I should be doing right now, with my grief. And I love it. I sit here all day and gather perspectives again as a mindset coach.
Mhm.
But, and that's why I started by saying grief can look different to every single soul,
Mhm.
and that's really important in terms of why you need to sit down and you need to figure out what that means to you as it pertains to your legacy, as it pertains to your values, as it pertains to the impact that you want to leave behind, which we say is mostly about how you make people feel. And that starts by stepping to the helm and getting really, really conscious and available to what it is that you feel. Anything else you want to say or add or ask in regards to anything I just unpacked?
You just said it so eloquently. It's beautiful.
I think it's not lost on me, you know. And I remember feeling this when I was 19, being so close to the portal, you feel things that you almost never feel in this
Mhm.
3D existence. You and I were talking about just how much was opening up just in terms of my channeling
Mhm.
abilities, as I was walking my mom home and to that door, I needed to channel a lot of guidance for her, right? Just to like really put her soul at ease. And so that's the thing that I think I haven't fully caught up to yet. I kind of earmarked it.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things I say I want to spend the summer kind of extensively exploring and processing my way through. But I'm so inspired by a lot of what opened up for me as a result of all of what I felt and witnessed and heard and experienced as I was close to that portal again. You know, yeah, I think it's going to inform a whole other aspect of our mission. I have a really strong intuition that something really big is going to open up as a result of this change. Yeah. And I don't want to call it an ending, because I
No.
think that's some of what has opened up for both of us in these last couple years talking about consciousness, right? What are you going to say?
No, exactly. That's what I was gonna comment on. It's not the end game. It's a journey. It's just
Hmm.
there's end. It's just a
Hmm.
journey, right?
Hmm. Yeah, some think of it as an evolution,
Yeah.
because now our soul goes home and takes all the wisdom with it that it came here to gain.
Mhm.
But in our perspective as spiritual women, this is the story that never ends,
No.
right? It's just it's on to the next chapter in a different form or dimension or however you want to think about that energetically. We all have our own beliefs about where we
Yeah.
go.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think that that's one of those themes I found in and around the sadness that brings me so much joy,
Mm.
because yeah, I'm really kind of excited to get to know my mom in spiritual form. I've only
Hmm.
ever known her in 3D form,
I know.
and I know the assignment that she and I signed up for was a big one in terms of all of the lessons that she helped me learn. And that was the thing I kept saying to her, thank you so much for saying yes to this contract because I probably learned more from you than anybody in this experience as Susan.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've gotten to know my dad's energy spiritually for the last 25 years, and it's guided me in so many incredible ways and helped me do things I never could have done without his guidance and
Hmm.
energy, inside of me and beside me. But yeah, I'm kind of excited and looking forward to what opens up there, because my mom's, like I said, she was a powerhouse. I can only imagine her in spiritual form, what she's going to be able to do.
Hmm.
So we'll end it on a high note in terms of, you were mentioning the horizon and what we have to look forward to. I think I'm demonstrating like that is like how I'm alchemizing this energy is that it's not all about lack and loss and scarcity, it's working with those parts that feel that naturally, because of this physical detachment that is a physiological reality that our body and our nervous system literally has to process its way through. Um, but yeah, there's this whole other spiritual perspective that I know is going to be inspired by walking my second parent through the portal at this stage of my impact game.
Hmm.
So that'll be our little teaser. We didn't want to go too deep because I just want to honor where I'm at. And I'm just not in a very verbose space in terms of being able to speak to a lot of what I'm experiencing because the waves are coming and they're coming fast and furiously. And there's a lot of data and intel, therefore, that I want to make sense of. But our promise and commitment to you, our audience, who's following along on this consciousness ride with us, is that we definitely want to hear from you in terms of some of how this is resonating, but also we commit to come in here and go deeper on these very concepts and topics. We're really starting to bridge into some of the spiritual realm here. And so I want to hear from our folks. Is that resonating? How do you think about grief? What are some of your practices? What does it mean to you? And ultimately, what are you curious about? Are you curious about the portal? Are you curious about what happens next? Are you curious about some of the spiritual gifts that can open up when you lead your life in this deeply conscious way? We want to answer your call. So we want to hear from you. Leave us a note, send us some feedback. You can always reach me via email, susan@elitehighperformance.com. Nothing I love more than having conscious conversations with my leaders right now. But yeah, we really want to co-create. That is the intention of Tracey and I getting on the mic and authorizing us talking about some of these concepts that you don't typically hear about on a leadership podcast. So please send us your feedback. We're so deeply grateful for all of you, for your presence, for your time, for your commitment to this show and this mission that we're on. And yeah, we really can't wait to see where this journey takes us all next. We've been saying that we're going through a giant, collective change in terms of consciousness itself. And so I'm just so grateful that we have all of you along for that ride, giving us the inspiration to get to go deep in exploring what's downloading in our intuition. Trace, do you have any final words now that we're
I
back?
think I think you've opened up a couple topics there for us to think about, right, over the next week or two. And I think that, anybody going through a process around grief, I hope that, listening to Susan will inspire you to kind of take note, or at least, be aware or drop in to be conscious around what you're feeling so that you can honor those feelings and try to understand or make sense of why they are, because you explained it really well. There's a physical detachment that happens, but then there's, if you're conscious, there's a different way to connect with those people, which is exciting and fun. And if you're a spiritual person, it's actually probably one of the best ways we like to connect, right? In terms of seeing the purpose and the meaning in everything we do all day long,
Mm-hmm.
everything, every step we take every day, and being able to see the connection there all the time is even more magical. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for sharing, and hopefully people can just kind of drop into that if you're in that space where Susan is, and I'm sure Susan will share more around those pieces she's putting together to help us kind of get even more, conscious of that when like you say, it's so unpredictable, it can happen, right? So let's
That
see.
is a fun note to mic drop on because I feel like we've really whet the appetite for a lot of where our inspiration is taking us. Even this word spirituality, I really want to do an episode on what that actually means, because I think to two very academic, business-minded, grounded women, like I think that we can bring a different perspective to that, right? That I think aligns quite well with how we think about leadership, in fact. So
Mm-hmm.
stay tuned this summer. We are going to use these summer months not only to get out of the city and up to our docks and out into Mother Nature, but also to really authorize us, being able to honor the downloads that are channeling through both of us right now on behalf of all of you. Thank you so much for holding space for me the last couple of weeks while I was out. My gratitude runs so deep, and I'm so excited to be back in it with all of you. We'll see you guys next week.